Ambassador Zephyr's tentacles trembled as the emergency session of the Galactic Council came to order. The massive chamber, carved from a single asteroid and suspended in the void between three star systems, had never hosted such an urgent gathering. Representatives from 47 species floated, sat, or clung to their designated positions, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien diversity. The crystalline hegemon, eldest of all the council members, resonated a deep harmonic that translated through the universal communicators as grave concern. "The signal," it began, its voice like wind chimes in a storm, "has been detected by every civilization capable of faster-than-light communication. It echoes across every frequency, penetrates every shield, and bypasses every filter we possess." Zephyr's species, the Velinary, had been among the first to detect the transmission 3 standard cycles ago. What started as curiosity had quickly turned to alarm. The signal wasn't just powerful, it was overwhelming. Several Velinary communication specialists had suffered neural damage simply from prolonged exposure to the raw transmission. "Show them the recordings," commanded General Thas, the Corvan military representative. His insectoid features clicked with impatience as holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. The signal appeared as a writhing mass of data, pulsing with patterns that seemed almost alive. To most species, it looked like chaos wrapped in mathematics. But there was something underneath a structure that promised, meaning if only they could survive long enough to decode it. Dr. Yulessa, the Arcturian chief scientist, raised one of her 4 arms. "We've lost 12 research teams to neural feedback. The signal appears to be designed for minds, different from ours. More resilient, more adaptable to information overload." "Barbarian minds," sneered Counselor Vex of the Refined Collective. His perfectly engineered form seemed to glow with disdain. "This signal is clearly from some primitive civilization that doesn't understand proper communication protocols." The hegemon's harmonic shifted to disagreement. "Preliminary analysis suggests otherwise. The signal originates from the galactic Cora region. We've never successfully explored due to the intense radiation and gravitational anomalies. Whatever sent this message has technology far beyond our current understanding." Zephyr watched the debate with growing unease. Every attempt to decode the signal had ended in disaster. The lucky researchers suffered only headaches and temporary disorientation. The unlucky ones had been permanently changed, their thought patterns altered, their minds somehow expanded beyond their species' normal capacity. Most of them had to be sedated to stop them from trying to respond to the signal with their own modifications to council communication arrays. "What about the new species?" asked Dr. Yulessa suddenly. "The ones from the outer rim, the humans?" A ripple of distaste moved through the chamber. Humanity had only recently been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, and many species still viewed them as violent primitives. Their homeworld, Earth, was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, a planet so hostile to life that most council members couldn't understand how any intelligent species had evolved there. "The Deathworlders?" Vex's tone dripped with disgust. "They barely qualify as civilized. Their planet is a nightmare of extreme weather, dangerous predators, and toxic environments. What could they possibly contribute to this situation?" Ambassador Krelak, one of the few council members who had spent time studying human culture, shifted nervously. "Actually," she began hesitantly, "their unique evolutionary background might be relevant. Humans developed cognitive abilities specifically adapted to processing overwhelming sensory input and making rapid decisions under extreme stress. Their minds are unusually robust." "Robust?" General Thas clicked dismissively. "They're barely past their nuclear age. They've been in space for less than 2 centuries. Yet they've already established colonies in 7 star systems," Krelak countered. "And they did it with technology we would consider primitive. They compensate for technological limitations with remarkable adaptability and resilience." The debate continued for hours. Species after species reported failed attempts to decode the signal. The Velinary had tried using their enhanced telepathic abilities. The Corvan had applied their advanced computational networks. The refined collective had employed their perfected logical algorithms. Every approach had failed. Finally, Zephyr spoke up. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should at least consult with the humans. If the signal is truly beyond our capability to safely process, we need alternatives. The chamber erupted in protests. The idea of turning to humanity, the newest and most primitive member of the council, was humiliating to many of the older species. They don't even have proper neural interfaces, protested Vex. How could they possibly succeed where we have failed? Because, said a new voice from the chamber's entrance, we don't need them. Every being in the chamber turned to see the human delegation entering. Ambassador Sarah Chun led the small group, her simple environmental suit a stark contrast to the elaborate life support systems worn by other species. Behind her walked Captain Marcus Torres, a military advisor, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's leading xenolinguist. Sarah Chun moved with the casual confidence that many species found unsettling in humans. She didn't float, glide, or scuttle like the others. She walked with the steady, predatory gait of an apex predator adapted to heavy gravity and hostile environments. Ambassador Chun, the hegemon resonated with surprise. You weren't scheduled to address the council. The signal, Sarah replied simply. We've been monitoring your discussions. The message isn't dangerous to us. A stunned silence filled the chamber. Dr. Yalesa was the first to recover. Impossible. The neural feedback alone should have incapacitated your research teams. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. We've had 12 volunteers listening to the raw signal for the past 6 hours. No ill effects. In fact, we're beginning to recognize patterns. Volunteers? Vex sounded horrified. You exposed your people to an unknown transmission without proper safety protocols? Captain Torres smiled grimly. Standard procedure for first contact scenarios. We always start with volunteers when dealing with potentially dangerous situations. The casual way he mentioned exposing people to danger shocked many of the council members. Most civilized species would spend years developing safety protocols before allowing any exposure to unknown phenomena. Show us, demanded General THASS. Dr. Vasquez activated a portable display unit. The human delegation had brought their own equipment. Zephyr noticed crude by galactic standards, but apparently effective. The display showed brain scans of the human volunteers, their neural activity patterns stable and coherent even while processing the signal. The message, Dr. Vasquez explained, appears to be a mathematical sequence, but it's embedded in sensory data designed to overwhelm conventional processing systems. The sender assumed any species capable of receiving it would need to filter and process the information gradually. But your species doesn't, Krelak said with dawning realization. Correct, Sarah Chun confirmed. Human brains evolved to process multiple streams of sensory input simultaneously while under extreme stress. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, environmental adaptation, all happening at once? What overwhelms your neural networks is just another Tuesday for us. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. The signal wasn't meant to be processed by civilized minds adapted to safe, controlled environments. It was designed for minds, forged in chaos, adapted to surviving overwhelming sensory input while making life-or-death decisions. What does it say? The hegemon asked quietly. Sarah Chun's expression grew serious. It's a distress call. Someone or something in the galactic core is asking for help, and they're specifically requesting contact with what they call chaos-adapted species. Deathworlders, Captain Torres added grimly. The chamber erupted in discussion, but Zephyr found himself studying the human delegation with new respect. These beings from their hostile little world might be the galaxy's only hope of responding to whatever intelligence waited at the galactic core. There's more, Dr. Vasquez continued once the noise died down. The signal contains navigation data and what appears to be a warning. Something is coming from outside our galaxy. Something that destroyed the sender's civilization. They're offering to share defensive technologies, but only with species they believe can survive the knowledge. Knowledge can't be survived or not survived, Vex protested. It's simply data. Sarah Chun's smile was cold and predatory. Tell that to your research team suffering neural damage from a simple transmission. Some knowledge is dangerous. Some knowledge requires a particular kind of mind to process safely. She paused, letting her words sink in. The question is, do you want our help? Or do you prefer to wait and see what happens when whatever destroyed the galaxy's core civilizations arrives here? The chamber fell silent. Every species present understood the implications. Their advanced technologies and civilized minds. The things they took such pride in might be liabilities when facing truly alien threats. Finally, the hegemon's harmonic shifted to resignation. What do you need from us? A ship, Sarah replied immediately. Something fast enough to reach the galactic core, and enough autonomy to respond to. The ship Endeavour hung in space like a silver needle against the cosmic backdrop, her hull gleaming with the advanced alloys gifted by the Galactic Council. Captain Marcus Torres stood on the bridge, watching the stars shift as they prepared for their final jump toward the galactic core. In 3 days of travel, they had pushed deeper into space than any human vessel had ever ventured. Jump drive charging, announced Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park from her station. The Korean-American engineer had volunteered for the mission despite knowing the risks. Like all the crew members, she had been chosen not just for her skills, but for her psychological profile. Humans who thrived under pressure and uncertainty. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat at the communications array, headphones covering her ears as she continued to analyze the signal. Unlike the alien researchers, she showed no signs of neural fatigue despite having listened to the transmission for nearly a week straight. Her brain, like all human brains, had evolved to process multiple streams of chaotic information simultaneously. Still picking up additional layers in the message, she reported to Captain Torres. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. Whoever sent this has been transmitting for centuries, maybe longer. They're desperate. Any new information about the threat? Torres asked, settling into his command chair. The bridge around him represented the best technology the Galactic Council could provide, but it had been modified extensively to accommodate human operational methods, where other species preferred automated systems and careful protocols. Humans insisted on manual overrides and the ability to make rapid tactical decisions. Fragments, Elena replied, pulling up a holographic display. References to something called the Void Seekers. The translation is rough, but they seem to be entities from outside our galaxy. The Sender's people tried to fight them with conventional technology and failed completely. Torres nodded grimly. Humanity's military history was full of technological mismatches where conventional thinking had failed. Sometimes you needed unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Captain, called out Navigator James Wright from his station, we're approaching the radiation barrier around the galactic core. Council ships usually turn back at this point. Torres studied the readings on his tactical display. The radiation levels ahead would be lethal to most known species within hours. Even with the ship's enhanced shielding, they were pushing into truly dangerous territory. How long can we survive in there? He asked Chief Medical Officer Dr. Yuki Tanaka. With current shielding and medical countermeasures, maybe 72 hours before we start seeing permanent cellular damage, she replied calmly. Though I should mention that humans actually have better radiation resistance than most council species. Our melanin production and DNA repair mechanisms are more robust. Another evolutionary gift from their Deathworld heritage. Earth's unstable magnetic field and occasional radiation bursts had forced humanity to develop biological defenses that most civilized species lacked. Signal strength is increasing, Elena announced. We're definitely on the right track. And Captain, I'm detecting response signals. Someone knows we're coming. Jump us in, Torres ordered. The transition was smoother than expected, but what they found on the other side of the jump took everyone by surprise. The space around the galactic core was filled with debris, the remains of massive structures that had once been technological marvels. But among the wreckage, they could see something else, a single, intact station hanging in the gravitational shadow of a massive black hole. That's impossible, breathed Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's astrophysicist. Nothing should be able to maintain position that close to a black hole of that size. The tidal forces alone should have torn it apart millennia ago. Unless, Elena said quietly, they have technology we don't understand. As they approached the station, its true scale became apparent. The structure was enormously the size of a small moon and built from materials that seemed to absorb and redirect the intense radiation of the galactic core. Most remarkably, it appeared to be using the black hole itself as a power source, drawing energy from the event horizon through some form of exotic matter manipulation. "This is Commander Torres of the human vessel Endeavor," Torres broadcast on the frequency indicated by the signal. "We received your transmission and have come to respond." The reply came almost immediately, but not through normal communication channels. Instead, the message was transmitted through the same overwhelming sensory bombardment that had damaged the alien researchers. To the human crew, it was merely intense. "Humans," came the translation through their enhanced communication system. "From the third world of the small yellow star. You came." The voice carried overtones of emotion that the universal translator struggled to interpret, but Elena thought she detected hope mixed with desperation. "We came," Torres confirmed. "Who are you? What happened here?" "We are were the architects," came the reply. "Builders of the great civilizations at the galaxy's heart. We guided the development of technology and culture for millions of your years. Until they came." The station began to transmit visual data directly to their neural interfaces, other technique that would have overwhelmed most species but that humans could process without difficulty. The images showed the galactic core as it had once been, a vast network of star-spanning civilizations, each more advanced than anything the current Galactic Council could imagine. Then came the darkness. The Void Seekers appeared in the images as something that defied conventional understanding. They weren't ships or beings in any recognizable sense. They were absences, holes in reality that consumed everything they touched. Matter, energy, even information itself was devoured by their presence. "They came from the empty spaces between galaxies," the architect continued, "drawn by the signatures of advanced civilizations. They do not destroy, they unmake. Everything they touch ceases to have ever existed." Dr. Kim was studying the sensor readings with increasing alarm. "Captain, I'm detecting gravitational anomalies approaching our position. Multiple contacts moving at impossible speeds." "The Void Seekers?" Torres asked. "They return periodically to ensure the consumption is complete," the architect confirmed. "They sense your presence. You must leave. Take our knowledge and prepare your people." "Not yet," Torres said firmly. "You called for help specifically from chaos-adapted species. Why? What can we do that others cannot?" The pause was long enough that Torres wondered if the communication had been severed. Finally, the architect responded. "Because fighting the void requires more than technology. It requires minds capable of processing impossible realities, consciousness that can adapt to contradictory information, the ability to act without complete understanding." Elena was furiously working at her communication station, downloading vast amounts of data from the station's memory banks. "Captain, they're transmitting everything, their entire technological database? Their understanding of the Void Seekers, defensive strategies that were never implemented. Why weren't they implemented?" Torres asked the architect. "Because they required species willing to risk everything on uncertain possibilities. Civilized minds seek certainty before action. Deathworld minds act on instinct when logic fails." The gravitational alarms were getting louder. Whatever was approaching was massive and moving at velocities that should have been impossible. "Captain," Wright called out urgently, "sensors are showing reality distortions approaching our position. Whatever these things are, they're not operating under normal physics." Torres made a decision that would have been impossible for most Galactic Council species. He chose to stay and observe the enemy rather than flee. "Immediately. All stations, battle ready," he ordered. "Elena, keep downloading. We need to know everything they can tell us." The first Void Seeker appeared on their screens as a sphere of absolute nothingness, surrounded by the twisted wreckage of space-time itself. It moved through the debris field without disturbing anything physically. Yet everything it passed ceased to exist retroactively. "Fascinating," Dr. Kim murmured, her scientific curiosity overriding her survival instincts in a way that was uniquely human. "They're not just destroying matter, they're unweaving the quantum information that defines reality itself. No wonder conventional weapons failed. The defense requires understanding this paradox," the architect transmitted urgently. "Reality weapons that function through controlled unreality. Technology that exists by not existing. Only minds capable of holding contradictory concepts simultaneously can operate such devices." More Void Seekers were appearing, drawn by their presence. The space around the station began to warp and twist as reality itself came under assault. "Dr. Vasquez, please tell me you're getting this," Torres said through gritted teeth as he watched impossible geometries unfold on the main screen. "Every bit," she confirmed. "And Captain, I understand now. The architects built the defensive technology, but they could never use it. Their logical minds couldn't accept the contradictions required to operate reality-based weapons." "What kind of contradictions?" Torres asked as he ordered evasive maneuvers around a patch of space that had simply stopped existing. "Weapons that work by failing. Shields that protect by allowing penetration. Communications that function by not sending messages." Elena's voice car. 3 months after the return of the Endeavor, the Mars shipyards worked around the clock under the red planet's dome-covered surface. What had once been humanity's proudest achievement in space construction was now the galaxy's only hope for survival. The Void Seekers were coming, and conventional weapons would be useless against entities that unmade reality itself. Admiral Sarah Chun, promoted from her ambassador position, stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species in the newly constructed Crisis Command Center. The chamber had been built using human architectural principles, functional, adaptable, and designed for rapid decision-making under pressure. Gone were the elegant floating arrangements of the traditional council chambers. In their place were practical workstations arranged for maximum efficiency. "The situation is worse than we initially reported," Admiral Chun began, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter of the assembled delegates. "Long-range sensors have detected reality distortions approaching from 3 different directions. The Void Seekers aren't just sending scouts, they're launching a coordinated assault on our galaxy." General Fass, his insectoid features clicking with agitation, leaned forward. "How long do we have?" "Based on current trajectory calculations, 18 months before the first wave reaches the outer rim systems," replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as head of xenolinguistic analysis for the Crisis Team, 2 years before they reached the core territories. Ambassador Zefter, who had become an unexpected ally to humanity during the crisis, raised a tentacle. "What progress has been made on the defensive technologies the architects provided?" Dr. Elena Vasquez activated the holographic displays, showing the construction progress on Mars. The images revealed something that defied every known principle of engineering and physics. The ships under construction seemed to exist in multiple states, simultaneously solid and ethereal, complete and unfinished, real and imaginary. "We've successfully built 3 prototype vessels using architect technology," Dr. Vasquez reported. "The construction process required teams of humans, working in what we call paradox mode, maintaining contradictory concepts in their minds simultaneously, while assembling components that exist by not existing." Counselor Vex of the Refined Collective, his perfect features twisted with disdain, spoke up. "This is madness. You're claiming to build ships from logical impossibilities." "Not logical impossibilities," corrected Dr. Sarah Kim, now Director of Reality Physics Research. "Quantum paradoxes extended to macro-scale reality. The weapons work by creating controlled zones of uncertainty where the Void Seekers' reality and weaving abilities become confused and loop back on themselves." The explanation was met with silence. Most of the council representatives couldn't even begin to process the concepts involved. Their species had evolved logical, orderly minds that sought consistency and rejected contradiction. The idea of deliberately embracing paradox was alien to them. "Show them the test results," Admiral Chun ordered. The displays shifted to show footage from the first weapon test, conducted in an empty star system near the galactic rim. A human-crewed prototype vessel approached. A chunk of asteroid that had been treated with void-seeker energy matter. That was in the process of being unmade from reality. The human ship fired what the architects had called a reality anchor, a weapon that worked by simultaneously existing and not existing. The effect was immediate and impossible to understand. The asteroid stopped being unmade and began existing again, its quantum information spontaneously regenerating from the controlled paradox created by the weapon. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Yulesa. "Matter cannot be recovered once it's been consumed by void-seeker energy. It can if you fire unbullets from non-guns using imaginary targeting systems operated by minds willing to believe impossible things," Dr. Kim explained with the casual tone humans used when discussing concepts that broke other species' understanding of reality. Captain Marcus Torres, now leading the Reality Defense Fleet, stepped forward. "The key insight from the architects is that fighting the Void Seekers isn't about superior technology, it's about superior consciousness. They unmake reality by imposing absolute logical consistency. Our weapons restore reality by embracing absolute logical contradiction." "But how do your people operate such systems without going insane?" asked Krelak, genuine curiosity overriding her usual diplomatic caution. Torres smiled grimly. "Because we evolved on a planet that never made sense to begin with. Earth taught us to function when logic failed, to make decisions with incomplete information, and to survive situations that shouldn't be survivable. Every human grows up learning to hold contradictory ideas in their mind. It's how we handle uncertainty." The demonstration continued with footage of human crews operating the reality-defying technology. Where other species would have suffered mental breakdown from the cognitive dissonance, humans seemed to thrive on it. They laughed at impossible targeting solutions, celebrated weapon systems that worked by failing, and treated paradoxical engineering problems like challenging puzzles rather than mind-breaking impossibilities. "There's something else," Admiral Chun announced, her expression growing serious. "The architects didn't just give us defensive technology. They provided the specifications for something they called the reality engine, a weapon capable of imposing controlled paradox across galactic distances." The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. "You're talking about a weapon that could affect the entire galaxy," the hegemon resonated with harmonics of alarm. "Not a weapon exactly," Dr. Vasquez corrected. "More like a reality stabilizer. It would create a field of controlled paradox that prevents the void seekers from unmaking matter by giving existence and non-existence equal validity. Everything would exist by not existing, making it impossible to be unmade." "The side effects?" Zephyr asked, though he clearly dreaded the answer. "Unknown," Chun admitted. "The architects never built it because their minds couldn't accept the contradictions required for operation. They gave us the plans because they believed Deathworld minds might be capable of understanding something that advanced civilizations cannot." General Fast clicked his mandibles nervously. "And you believe humanity can operate such a device safely?" Torres exchanged glances with his colleagues. "General, my species learned to split atoms before we properly understood radiation. We developed global communication networks before we understood computer security. We reached space before we solved the basic problems of living peacefully on our own planet." He gestured toward the construction footage still playing on the displays. "Operating technology we don't fully understand in order to solve problems that shouldn't be solvable is basically our entire civilization's history. The difference this time is that we know we don't understand it." Over the following months, the galaxy watched in fascination and terror as humanity constructed the reality engine in the outer solar system. The device defied every law of physics while somehow adhering to deeper principles that existed beyond conventional understanding. It was built by human engineers who had trained themselves to think in paradoxes, operated by crews who could maintain contradictory beliefs simultaneously, and powered by technology that generated energy by not consuming fuel. The first void seeker scouts reached the outer rim 2 weeks ahead of schedule. They appeared as moving holes in space-time, consuming entire asteroid belts and leaving only emptiness behind. The human reality defense fleet met them at the edge of the Kepler system with weapons that shouldn't have been able to exist. The battle was broadcast across the galaxy, though most species could only process edited versions due to the cognitive strain of observing paradoxical warfare. Humans fired weapons that missed by hitting, destroyed enemies by creating them, and defended positions by abandoning them. The Void Seekers, accustomed to unmaking reality through imposed logic, found themselves caught in loops of contradiction that prevented them from functioning. "It's working," reported Captain Torres from the flagship Paradox. "The reality anchors are preventing them from unmaking our ships, and our existence negation torpedoes are confusing their navigation systems." Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Void Seekers were retreating, their reality unweaving abilities neutralized by weapons that existed through not existing, but the real test came when the main invasion force arrived. Thousands of Void Seekers materialized simultaneously across the galaxy's spiral arms, each one capable of consuming star systems. The approach should have meant the end of galactic civilization. Instead, it became the moment humanity activated the reality engine. The effect was subtle but profound. Across millions of light years, reality became slightly more flexible. Existence and non-existence achieved perfect balance. The Void Seekers found that instead of unmaking matter, their abilities simply shifted it into alternative states of being, states that human-designed technology could manipulate and restore. Report from all sectors. Admiral Chen called out from the Crisis Command Center as data flooded in from across the galaxy. "Void Seeker advance halted in the Vega sector," reported one station. "Human reality anchors are maintaining local spacetime stability." Sirius System reports successful paradox bombardment of Void Seeker concentrati.